Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Games Never Finish. Vicious Grandma here, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I definitely appreciate it. So this is going to be a different stream. I'm not playing anything today. Um, Not really playing anything today because I just beat Suikoden 2 yesterday. So if you haven't seen the conclusion of that video, you can just go back and watch everything on demand. I did make highlights of some key moments, so you could just check the highlights. I did create a collection of all of Stevenson 3's highlights. Uh, I don't know if it went through or not, so you guys can check. But today I want to kind of talk about all the games I played in season 3, just to kind of recap everything, the things I liked about the game, the things I did not like about the game. Um, and then talk about season 4 and some of the games that are going to be featured. And again, you guys can sway me anyway. If you're like, hey, have you played this? Have you beaten this game? Well, I suggest you do that one and not do this one. You have the freedom to let me know exactly what games I play, because again, this channel's, even though it's my channel and I love trying to beat these old games that I haven't finished yet, I also want to see what's pleasing to you. uh, Talking with some of you guys, I know you guys have absolutely told me time and time again, Mass Effect Andromeda, do not play that game. I will not watch you play that game because it is that bad. So that has been taken off the list. Hey, thank you so much, Cleben. I appreciate it. So, yeah, let's talk about the games. Season 3, I played Breath of Fire 3, Suikoden 2, and the Final Fantasy 7 Remake, which Suikoden 2 and Final Fantasy 7 Remake were kind of um, additions to them. They're kind of outside the wheelhouse of this channel. So let's just talk about the game I just finished, Suikoden 2, because it's kind of the freshest on my mind. Like I've said before, I never played Suikoden 2. I played 1, 3, 4, and 5. Never finished any of the games. Even played Tactics a little bit. Never finished that either. Um, the game's great. Suikoden 2 is absolutely fantastic. I can see why some people say that this is probably the best in the series. The characters are great. Depending on what characters you choose in your party, it just seems like each character always shines with their personality. Um, I mean, the character development's great. The story's fantastic. There's times in the game where I was always like kind of wondering what was going to happen next. And that's always important in storytelling. You want to take the person who's playing on a journey. And if they're not invested in the story, then they're not going to continue to play your game. They're not going to continue to watch your movie or read your book. So when you have a story that's so compelling and has so many um, twists and turns and it's just multi-layered, that's the epitome of great storytelling. And when you can get that in a game, it doesn't matter how many side quests you are, and after you kind of finish a mission, you go and start trying to recruit 108 stars of destiny. You it, it still keeps you entrenched in the story. You want to know what happens next. You want to know everything. And let's see, Cleveland. Yes, and I mean, and even the concept of runes, that's a good point. You bring up a good point. Like that was always good. And how people would use them. And I think that was always good. And especially just the teams, and if they, and sometimes that was always interesting, especially if you think about, again, I'm blind playing through this, so I'm not trying to look up a lot of stuff on the internet like we have today, but I'm trying to play it back when I would have played this game, which had been back in like the 90s, where internet was still primitive. And just finding out, like, oh, when I put these three people together, they have a power attack. Like that was pretty cool. Or, oh, I didn't know these two people could have a power attack. Let's see how it is. Is it something I want to use later as like kind of like my core party, or is it something I'm like, no, I don't want to use this. So that was always good. And then everything, I mean, the battle systems, from the strategic battles to the duels to the boss battles, it wasn't like where I felt like a boss battle was easy. especially after the 99 glitch, I mean, I still had some issues with the final boss, the final battle, and that's always something that's great in a game. You want something that's going to give a challenge and also kind of feel rewarded and feel complete when you actually conquer an obstacle. Now, the things I did not like about Suikoden 2, um, obviously there's some glitches in the game, but that's to be expected in older games, and even in newer games, you're always going to find a glitch. But those things weren't as bad. The one thing that annoyed me so much about Suikoden 2 is when you do the strategic battles, and I felt like in Suikoden 1, you always played the strategic battles out to the very end. And I felt like more times strategic battles were used as storytelling devices instead of actual gameplay devices. So it would infuriate me when I'm kind of getting in there and all of a sudden the battle disappears because there's certain story elements. There's so many turns like, oh, you lose. And it's like, but I was actually defeating a lot of people. How did I just lose that game? But it's part of the story. And it's just like, man, like that was probably the only criticism I'd have about Suikoden 2, but everything else about that game was fantastic. Let's talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake. I thought it was good. I know some people didn't like it, especially the die-hard Final Fantasy VII fans. Again, I'm more of a Final Fantasy VI fan myself. Yeah, yeah, but when my battle got cut off, Cleveland, yes, like, it's so frustrating about Suikoden 2. I liked Final Fantasy VII because I liked how they kind of took the core elements of the story and tried to adapt it to a new generation of gamers. As sad as it may sound, in gaming culture, a lot of times when you have newer kids who are growing up who are getting into gaming, a lot of times they want something that's visually pretty, and a lot of times they're not looking at going back to playing some of the older older games. Even my son, even though we love playing Donkey Kong Country 2, he would rather play Super Mario Maker 2, or he'd rather play something that's a little bit more visually appealing than something that is a 16 or an 8-bit game, which breaks my heart because I feel like even though the quality of graphics were not top notch, the story elements of those games I felt were pretty good and very creative in that aspect. So I love Final Fantasy VII. I love some of the battle system. The new battle system I thought was great. It really made things a little bit more fluid. Like, it was more hack and slash, but there was a strategic element to that game. And then, it was one of those games where after I beat it, I went back and I started to play hard mode, and I got stuck. But for the most part, the game was great. Some of the criticisms, I think there's something when you get towards the end of the game and you kind of reveal Sephiroth as this villain. Um, I felt like when they showed Sephiroth at the very beginning and kind of even showed him being the antagonist early, I felt like that kind of ruined the reveal. Um, at the same time, I did like how there was more story arc and story elements, and you can see more of a relationship building between the voice acting, the character movement, and even some of the text. And even though playing some of the older games and seeing how the text and some of the things that relate, it was very good of kind of seeing some more of the improvness, especially for those of you who played the original Final Fantasy VII, there's the infamous attack on Shinra Tower, and you could choose to go through the main doors into the lobby and fight people, or you could take the stairwell, and you're just constantly going up the stairwell. And I loved that scene in the remake because it was just always, you're running, I'm trying to run up the stairs, but then there's a time I'm holding the run button, I'm not running, I'm just like dragging, and it just kind of gave that idea of being tired or how long this stairwell is. And even the constant complaining between Barrett and Tifa, that was always great. And I really loved that aspect. So for the most part, I thought Final Fantasy 7 Remake was great. Um, it did have its flaws, which I kind of shared some of that, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. Then let's talk about Breath of Fire 3. Breath of Fire 3, I loved Breath of Fire 1 and 2 on the Super Nintendo. Played Breath of Fire 3. I felt like the story was great. I thought that the story, and especially to the point where when you got to the final battle, you had a choice if you wanted to keep the peace in the world or if you're going to destroy the world according to the goddess Mira, what you wanted to do. And you had a choice, and there's two endings to that game, which I do show that in the highlights. But the thing that bothered me so much about Breath of Fire 3 was how inconsistent battles were. How sometimes it was hard to level up because a lot of times you're just fighting weaker opponents and it just took forever to level up. Um, I liked some of the animations and some of the character. I mean, everything. I mean, the artwork looked fantastic. Some of the full motion videos dated, but that's what they expected for an older game. But the one thing that I think really bothered me the most is just how the second half just felt like it was just grinding the whole time. And it just seemed like that second half of the story, when you go from childhood to adolescence, it was so much quicker. But then that's when you started doing more mini games. That's when he felt like you were doing all this other stuff and you had more freedom to try to get your masters and try to level up that way and get new spells and new skills. And it just seemed like it was just that whole second half was a hot mess, and it made me literally. I stopped in the middle of the game to go play the Final Fantasy VII remake to kind of refresh my brain because I was to the point where I'm like, I don't want to play this anymore. Not because it's difficult, not because it's hard. It's just I'm getting bored with this game, and I think that was kind of the main reason why I stopped playing Breath of Fire 3 many years ago because I got to a point where I'm like, I'm just tired of stream. I want to play something new and refreshing. This is just a drag. So at the end of the day, I really enjoyed all three games. I definitely enjoyed Suikoden 2. I definitely enjoyed the remake. You know, uh, yeah. I mean, Cleveland. And the thing is with Breath of Fire 3, it's not a bad game. And I think what happened with Breath of Fire 3, because Breath of Fire 1 and Breath of Fire 2 are so similar, different stories, but they still have the same, like, tropes. And that's kind of what makes Breath of Fire Breath of Fire. You're always going to have a blue haired dragonborn named Ryu in all of the iterations of that game. You're always going to have a fairy named Nina. So those characters always seem to continue to pop up, even though it's generations later. Kind of like Legend of Zelda. You're always going to have a Link in Zelda, even though it spans time. Um, but yeah, it wasn't a bad game, and it was. And I think what the Capcom did is they just took risks. They really took a lot of risk and tried to do some more cool stuff with the series. But it did get grind heavy towards the second half of the game. And I think that's kind of what bogged me down on why I never finished it. So I mean, I'm glad I finished the game. I was glad I was able to do it. But yeah, there's just a lot of mini games and stuff that was just like, But for the most part, battle system was great. I loved the dragon system where you could use different, I forget what they're called now, different runes, I guess, to kind of put together to kind of create different dragons with different powers and abilities. And I always enjoyed that aspect of the game. Um, yeah, so again, season three, love season three. I think it's probably like my best season as far as the games played. I really enjoyed every single one of those games I played. So now let's kind of get to season four. Now, again, for those of you who are new, who don't know how this channel works, basically I let you guys vote for the games I play in season four. And it's a variety of games. I have some platformer games. I may have some strategy games, some role playing games. Basically, games that I never finished that I want to go back to, revisit, and play them again and try to finish. So the first question that's always asked is, are you going to do any sequels from the previous season? Well, Breath of Fire, I never played Breath of Fire 4, so that's not on the list. I did play Breath of Fire 5, but I feel like if I'm going to play any type of Breath of Fire, I'm going to have to play 4 before I jump back into 5. Even though they're totally different stories, like Final Fantasy, where they're all different. Um, it's just more for aesthetics, and that's just how my mind works. Um, so as far as Breath of Fire 4, I'm not. That's not on the list. Not planning on playing that. Final Fantasy VII Remake. They don't have the sequel out yet. It's probably going to be another year or two before that comes out. So, and I have some Final Fantasy games that I haven't finished yet, and I will reveal some of those. I have two of them on this list. But for the most part, I'm not going to try to do anything there. Suikoden 2. The one game that is on the list is I do have. Yeah, I'm going to let you vote for it, Cleben. You tell me what games I play. So here's the list. But Suikoden 3 is on the list. So if you would like me to play Suikoden 3, you can vote for that game. Either throw it in the message or go to Twitter. I'll post something on my Twitter account, twitter.com/viciousgrandma. I think I might put a poll up there, and you guys get to vote on what games I play. So Suikoden 3 is on there, and Suikoden 3 was actually the first Suikoden game I ever played that really got me into the series. Um, so I played probably. The only thing I remember about Suikoden 3 is that I would play as three different main characters, especially at the beginning. I remember a boy from like the Wildlands, and I played as him, and then it went to somebody else, and I played as them, and then I went to somebody else, and I played as them. So, so in that way, I never got through that because that was like a Blockbuster rental, so I had 5 days to play that game. So obviously, I wasn't going to beat that game. But yeah, it's something that I would love to revisit. I actually own the game, so Suikoden 3 is on the list. The other game I have on here is Jade Empire. If you haven't heard of Jade Empire is a BioWare game, the people who created Mass Effect. Um, they also created the Knights of the Old Republic games that was on like um, I played it on the Xbox, the original Xbox. And what was Jade Empire so interesting because BioWare came out with Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, critical success. Came out with Knights of the Old Republic 2, again, success. And then they came out with Jade Empire, which is basically plays the same way as those games I've just mentioned, but it's karate, it's Middle East, or not Middle East, it's Eastern culture, so you have and I can't remember the setting, so please don't shoot me. I think it's China, might be Japan. I'm not 100%. I think it's China, but it's that type of culture and those type of Eastern themes. Um, really enjoyed playing that game. Again, that was a rental, so I never finished that game. The other game I have on my list is Dragon Age Origins. Um, I really love a good like fantasy based role playing game, and I remember playing Dragon Age Origins, and I loved it so much. I believe this was kind of a BioWare slash EA kind of joint when EA bought BioWare. So really enjoy this game. Never finished it. Got really close to finishing it, and then again I went on something else. The other game I have is Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. If you ever played a Donkey Kong Country game, they are fun platformers. They're fun to play with people, and especially the ones that came out on the Wii are very difficult. And Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is a game that I never finished because, again, it was so hard. I know I have the Switch version where you can play as Funky Kong and you can kind of, it's like easy mode, so you can kind of, I wouldn't say it's cheating because you can still die, but you have a lot more tools in your arsenal to be able to fly through the levels instead of if you're just playing as Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong. Um, The other game I have is kind of a weird game. It's called Final Fantasy Tales Chocobo Dungeon. It came out on the Wii. I believe it was a remake to the Chocobo Dungeon game that was originally on the PlayStation 1. Basically, it's a game that you pretty much play as a Chocobo from the Final Fantasy series, and it's like a dungeon crawling game where there's a town that has some people are not acting right in town, so Chocobo has to go into these portals to kind of help get the town back in order. Again, very fuzzy on the game. I just remember I enjoyed playing it, and it was interesting and it was new. And I figured, this is one of the ones where it's kind of more of a deep cut. So we'll see if anyone picks that one. The other game is the original Dark Cloud on the PlayStation 2. I played Dark Cloud 2 Season 2 and absolutely beat that game. I think that was like the best of the series. Dark Cloud it's a good game, but a lot of flaws, and a lot of those flaws were fixed in Dark Cloud 2. So obviously, Dark Cloud is going to be that game where it's going to be a grind, and it may be one of those games that I may just not finish. I may just quit because of how, you have your health bar, but the other thing you had is you had a thirst bar. So not only did you have to bring in your limited inventory food for you to eat, but then you also had to bring water with you, because if you get thirsty, then your health will start depleting. So you had to keep eating and drinking, and sometimes that was frustrating because you'd always have to fight battles, drink some water, eat some food, and it was absolutely a pain in the butt while you're trying to go through these dungeons and unlock these geospheres to recreate these towns that were destroyed by a magical genie. So let's get into Final Fantasy, because Final Fantasy, beloved RPG series. So I actually have two Final Fantasy games on my list. I have Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy IX. Now, Final Fantasy IV is a game I played on the Super Nintendo. It actually was Final Fantasy II, but if you know about the number system and all that jazz. So Final Fantasy IV, I played that game all the way to the point where I was on the moon fighting a behemoth. So I was at towards the very end of the game, and I just stopped playing it. I think I got too hard. I didn't really level up my characters very well, and I was just getting my butt handed to me, and I just said, well, I screwed this up, so I was kind of done playing the game. Final Fantasy IX, again, got to the very end of the game and just never finished it. But I know that's a very beloved game by people. People love Final Fantasy IX. Even though people talk a lot about Final Fantasy VII, and people either have a love-hate relationship with Final Fantasy VIII, especially in the PlayStation era. Towards the end of the PlayStation 1 cycle, you got Final Fantasy IX. Yeah, I was already at the end. I didn't finish it. And mainly, a lot of that was mainly because I got bored and I wanted to play a different game. And again, I didn't have as a kid, I was involved in so much stuff with theater, with sports, and a lot of stuff that eventually I just didn't have time to play games. And eventually, I got to a point where if I was going to play a game, I'd rent a game, I'd play it real quick, or I'd play something that was very quick that I didn't put a lot of time into, because I didn't want to have to play Final Fantasy. I didn't want to have to play Final Fantasy IV, and then I have to go run the theater practice, and then I'm not near a save point, and my sister gets on the console and starts playing something else, and all my work has been gone because I wasn't able to find a save point. So, yep. So, yeah, I did not finish Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy IX. Yeah, and I think that's why that's why I have all these games, because they're games I love. There's something about if there's a game I didn't finish and I absolutely hate it, it's not coming on this list. Or maybe it's one that I may have played or dabbled in. It's like, well, let me go a little bit further. And if I play it and I'm like, I really don't like this game, so I'm just going to say, nope, I'm done with it. Which I know some of my older followers, they remember when I played Dragon Warrior 2 and how I just like rage quit that game. I definitely rage quit that game. Gosh, that game was not good. But yeah, but Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy IX, both great games. Definitely want to play them, revisit them, and try to beat them. But yeah, and especially with Final Fantasy IV, I actually own the game on the Super Nintendo. I have like the collection, the Final Fantasy collection. Do I? No, I don't have it. I thought I had it on the PlayStation 3 at one point. But then I also have on my PC, and I also have Final Fantasy IV: The After Years too, which was kind of a sequel they made based off all those characters of Final Fantasy IV, which I've never played, and obviously I'm not going to play that game unless I play Final Fantasy IV. But yeah, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy IX's on that game. The other game is an Xbox exclusive. It was called a very what maybe it wasn't well known. I mean, I remember seeing commercials on TV for it, but it's called Lost Odyssey. And the game follows this guy who's an eternal who's been around for thousands of years, and he's kind of a mercenary for hire. And he goes around and he goes into these wars, but then even if he gets killed, he comes back to life. And that was one of the mechanics I thought was interesting in the game, because if they get slain during battle, that character will just remain, unconscious for at least maybe a couple turns, and then they will like revitalize again. So it was an interesting gameplay. Plus, what was great about this game was the storytelling kind of came from unlocking dreams. And you could talk to someone, they would tell a story, and it would trigger something where you would remember something for your past. Because every time when you would die, you would come back to life, but then your memories would be erased. So you wouldn't remember kind of things in your life from like 500 years ago. But these backstories within this game, which has made the game so compelling. Plus, they had a ring system, which basically when you went to attack, you had to hit the button in time with a ring. Almost kind of like Final Fantasy's 8's battle system, where you could go and you could do damage, but if you're able to hit the button like right at a certain time, you could do more damage. And that's kind of the same thing with Lost Odyssey. So that's another game that I miss. Another game is a platformer, Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii. Mario in space, that's all I can say about that game. I really love the dynamics of that game. I really love the worlds. I love to introduce the Rosalind, I think that's her name, like her introduction. And I just thought it was something outside of Mario's wheelhouse, being up in space. Even though Super Mario Sunshine was kind of something that was a little bit outside, but it was still a platform game. Just you had a water dispenser to clean off paint, you can use it to hover and rocket and everything else. But Super Mario Galaxy, you get to travel around worlds, you got to meet interesting characters, and I thought that game was just so great. Again, another rental game that I played. Eventually had to return it. But yeah, for the most part, great game. Actually, my son had some money. His aunt got him a Nintendo eShop card, and he decided he wanted to buy the Super Mario 3D collection. So I now have Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. So that's going to be a game that I'll be looking forward to playing. The other game, and again, when I say this game, some of you are probably going to be like, either you've heard this game or you know this game very well and just the crazy story about this game. But the other game I have is Okami, which was a game that was produced by an art studio back in the PlayStation 2 era, where you play as a god, and you got to battle, but then you had a unique paintbrush system where you could paint stuff, and you can like cause wind to come around, or you could cut trees. And I played it on PlayStation 2, and then I got it for my Wii when the art studio went under, and then Capcom took it over. So I have it there, and now I have the HD collection on my PC. So it's a game where and again, I love art. I mean, I love everything. I love painting, I love theater, I love great art, and I love great storytelling. So when there's a game that has great visuals and great storytelling, I'm automatically there. I love those games, those type of games. So those are the games. The other game is a PlayStation 1 game called Parasite Eve that came out with Squaresoft. After with the success of Final Fantasy VII, and even with Final Fantasy VIII, I feel like Squaresoft had a very creative boom, and they were creating a lot of these interesting games. So Parasite Eve was a game which is what game, Cleveland, would you like me to play? Which game is that? Was it Okami or Parasite Eve? All right, yeah, okay. I will. Let me mark that down. Cleveland, Parasite Eve, and you get to choose 3 games because if I play 3 games, you get 3 votes. So you let me know. But yeah, Parasite Eve, and I love. I mean, I love horror. So horror, like even like now, I've been watching 70s horror movies before I go to bed, which is kind of weird. But I love horror elements, and I love the gameplay of kind of the turn-based thing. But then you can kind of move around and you can shoot things with a gun, and I just love the story of the game. It was very interesting. So I loved Parasite Eve. And I would really love to revisit that game. So obviously, I'll put that down for you, Cleveland, to play that game. The other one is another kind of deep cut on the PlayStation 2 era. It's called Ratata Stories. And Ratata Stories is a role playing game that has a time travel. Has kind of a time travel mechanism, which basically you play the game and occasionally you can travel back to time either in the future, in the past, and you can kind of build up characters. And it even had like a character, I believe it had a character recruitment thing where you could travel and recruit characters to do things. So are you playing Ratata Stories? Are you serious? Wow, man. Wow, man. Yeah, I mean that game was I love that game. And again, that was another rental. It's Square Suikoden, basically. Absolutely. Absolutely. You are right on the money with that, Cleveland. Right on the money. It was. It was just like Suikoden. And I liked that game. And I know they came out. I know there was a Ratata game that came out on the DS or the 3DS, like maybe a couple years back. I played it, but I mean I really enjoyed the PlayStation 2 Ratata Stories. Like I really enjoyed that game, and it was like once my time was up, I had to return it. But yeah, that game was fantastic. So I'd love to revisit that game. The other game, the other game is a game that was on the Wii U, and it was called Tokyo Mirage Sessions #FE, which is basically you have Fire Emblem characters in this role playing game where you are a pop singer, a Tokyo pop singer, but yet you're also fighting villains. So kind of think of the Persona series, but you are a musician and you have some elements where you do kind of like create a character that has to perform and be a pop star in Tokyo. And then not only that, but then you have not Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem characters that just kind of randomly show up. So it was like a weird mashup, which I felt like there was a time in Nintendo's thing where they were really doing a lot of mashups with their characters. But yeah, Tokyo Mirage Sessions #FE. That's a game that's on my list. The other game that's on my list is Xenosaga 2. In the PlayStation 1, there's a game called Xenogears, and that game was absolutely great. I love that game. And I beat in that game, and then there was nothing more said about that game. And then some of the original developers with Namco, they ended up creating Xenosaga. And I guess originally they were going to create Xenosaga 1 through 6, and then 7 was going to be Xenogears. So they're kind of tying everything into the story. But they only made 3 Xenosaga games. So I beaten the first one, and it kind of had the same thing with Suikoden, where after you beat the game, you could take your save files and transport them over. But it's a great game because not only do you have your basic like sci-fi sci-fi cyberpunk kind of role-playing game, but then you also get to battle in mechs, which I really love that about Xenogears. So not only do you get to fight as a person, but then you can easily jump into your mech and battle as a mech, and I think that's awesome. And then the final game that I have on my list is a recent game that's probably come out about a couple years ago. That is Yoshi's Crafted World for the Nintendo Switch. Again, I love arts and I love creativity. So once I see a game like a Yoshi series where it's like knitted Yoshis and it's kind of playing almost in like a collage, and how well the video game mechanics and how it almost looks like I'm watching like someone like post like my son's artwork come to life. I guess that's the best way to put it. It's like my 6 year old's artwork coming to life. That's Yoshi's Crafted World, another platformer. Love that game. Got about halfway through the game, and then of course, I'm playing other stuff, and that's kind of how it goes. You play a game, then a new game comes out, and you go, "Oh, I want to play that one," and then you get invested. I think I don't remember the timeline, but I believe I played Yoshi Crafted World. I think then Witcher 3 came out, and I jumped right into The Witcher 3, and I haven't touched Yoshi since. So yeah, again, so those are season 4 games that you guys can vote on. Let me go through them again: Jade Empire, Dragon Age Origins, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Final Fantasy Tales, Chocobo Dungeon, Dark Cloud, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy IX, Lost Odyssey, Super Mario Galaxy, Okami, Parasite Eve, Ratata Stories, Suikoden 3, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, #FE, Xenosaga 2, and Yoshi Crafted World. Those are the games that you can vote on. If you think that there's another game you'd like me to play, feel free to suggest it. And if I've played it and I haven't beaten it, I will take that into session. If I have beaten it, then I'm probably not going to play that game. And if I've never played it, then you know what? I'll flip a coin. Maybe I might say, yeah, I'll dive into this game. Let's see, why not? So again, you guys can vote right here in the message board. Just kind of send your comments. I know Kleben put Parasite Eve down, so already I got that checked off. I'm going to be posting something on my Twitter page that will hopefully have a poll. I'm not sure how polls on Twitter work. I know Facebook has like a better poll system, but then you guys can vote for what games you want me to play then. And then probably, I do have some stuff this weekend. I'm going to kind of take a break for a while. But then once I get back on, I'll definitely announce the season 4 games and get right into playing them. Yes, you get 3 votes. That's a good question, Kleben. 3 votes. So you get 3 votes. And I do that because, again, 3 games, I feel like everyone gets 3 votes. And I think that kind of gives more versatility to the type of games I play. So yeah, you get 3 votes to pick the games that you get to choose, and from there, and I don't know how well I can do that on Twitter. I may just have to make it a post and people have to comment their votes if I can't get it to work. But I will put up my Twitter account. Again, that is twitter.com/viciousgrandma. But yeah, I should probably put my banner up there. I know it's a Twitch logo because I do have a Vicious Grandma page. Hey, Oliver, how are you? All right. Okay, Cleveland. Yeah, so thank you. Hey, Oliver. So, yeah, how's it going? Yeah, I'm doing good. So, right now I've beaten so I beat Suikoden 2 yesterday. I'm now talking about the games that I'm going to be playing for season 4. And I've kind of made a list of the games. So I'll read them off again, and then you get 3 votes, Oliver, on what games you'd like to see me play in Season 4. So the games I have on my list are Jade Empire, Dragon Age Origins, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Final Fantasy Tales Chocobo's Dungeon, Dark Cloud, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy IX, Lost Odyssey, Super Mario Galaxy, Okami, Parasite Eve, Ratata Stories, Suikoden 3, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, #FE, Xenosaga 2, and Yoshi Crafted World. Those are the games on my list, so you get 3 votes, and any vote that you any games you'd like to pick, just let me know and I'll put them to the list. Actually, let me go pull up my notepad real quick so I can write all of these down and make sure I got them all squared away. So we have one vote for Parasite Eve, Suikoden 3, and Player's Choice. I'll call that Player's Choice. Thank you, Cleben, for that. But yeah, so those are the games. And what I will do is, even though, man, any of these games I'm fine with, Oliver. I mean, I want to play any of these. I mean, I'm fine with a lot of these games. I mean, again, if they're on the list because they're ones that I'm interested in replaying. So, I mean, so yeah, I mean, all the names I mentioned, they're fair game. I mean, I like to play all of them. Already we got a vote for Parasite Eve and Suikoden 3. So, and I really have to think about it because sometimes, I'll put these lists out and sometimes I could find a game that is challenging or something like that's why I don't have many PlayStation 3 games on here because, I haven't created the poll yet. I'm just announcing it, but if you want to just write your comments in the message, Oliver, I will throw them up. But yeah, my poll, I'm going to try to put it on my Twitter page. That's twitter.com/viciousgrandma. I will put it on there for you guys to vote. But yeah, Dragon Age for you? All right. And again, you got two more, Oliver, so you can really think about it or however you like to do. That's true, Cleveland. That is true. That's very true. If I really want to, luckily I'm not into the whole 100%ing thing for this channel. It's just more about starting and completing the game. If I really want to be ambitious to 100%, then yeah, it will take me a long, long while. But luckily, I guess for the sake of trying to keep this season moving and trying to get as many games I can play possible before I get tired of doing streaming or I pass away, which is kind of a grim way to look at things, which I'm not planning on doing that anytime soon. Yeah, it's mainly just let's start the game, let's finish the game. So if I was able to get the 108 stars of Destiny and Suikoden 2, great. If not, that's fine too, as long as I'm able to finish the game. That's kind of the motion of the channel. But yeah, great. And then what I will do, because I won't be streaming, but I will kind of record a video and then probably do a recast of all this stuff. So then that way people can kind of see like, okay, how to vote on here. But again, twitter.com/viciousgrandma. That's where I'm going to post the poll. So again, let me see. I probably have to get off pretty soon because I have some work stuff to do. Okay. And then that will be it. But guys, I want to thank you guys for really supporting this channel because, again, this is a fun thing for me. So, I'm not doing this to try to get affiliate or get partner or, I'm not in it for that reasons. I'm just in it because I just love to play games and I love to stream. And I'm sure there's some of you guys who really want to see other people play some games that you grew up with, that you love, or even some games that you're curious about. It's like, I don't know about this game. Let me watch it and see what this game's all about. So that's it. So after I sign off here, I'm going to go ahead and put that poll up, and then I will let you guys vote on my Twitter page, and we will go from there. All right, guys. So again, I want to thank you so much for, again, this opportunity for you guys to enjoy my stream. Make sure you follow my channel as I will put stuff up. Follow me on Twitter as I will put the list up of games that can be voted for. And I will definitely be back soon once I feel like I got enough votes. You're very welcome, Cleben. All right, guys. You have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.